I wish I could tell you I didn't see it coming, that the comment took me by surprise, but the truth is, I did. I felt it building, like a storm in the pit of my stomach all morning. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, the kind that dances on the surface like sunlight on water. Everyone was smiling, teachers, parents, proud siblings in dresses and button-downs. Balloons floated near the stage, gold and navy blue, matching the school colors. I stood near the back, hands in my jacket pockets, silently rehearsing my smile. The one that says, "I'm fine, really." Kayla looked stunning, her cap slightly crooked in the cutest way, eyes sparkling with that kind of joy you can't fake. We're proud of her, truly. But as the family huddled around her for photos, I felt it again, that weight, like I didn't quite belong in the frame. Then came the moment. My mother leaned over Kayla's shoulder, brushing a speck off her gown with this overly performative tenderness. Her voice, soft but clear, said, "And this one actually achieved something, unlike her." Her eyes didn't even flicker toward me. She didn't need to. Every syllable hit its mark. My breath caught in my throat like I'd swallowed ice. I stared at the floor, willing it to swallow me whole. Uncle Richard, always ready to throw gasoline on any fire, chuckled and added, "The other one couldn't even graduate a marriage." He said it like it was a punchline. And it landed. Even the teachers standing nearby gave those tight, polite smiles people wear when they don't want to get involved, but also don't want to seem rude. That kind of smile that cuts deeper than a straight-up insult. I felt Liam shift beside me. He didn't say anything, but I saw him glance up at me, his brow furrowing just a little. I forced a smile down at him, the kind of smile I've perfected over years of hiding hurt. Why did it still sting so badly? I wasn't new to this. I knew my family saw me as the disappointment, the one who didn't finish college, who got divorced, who was too emotional and too difficult, too much. But it still felt like a fresh slap every time they said it out loud, especially in front of my son. My hands trembled as I pulled my jacket tighter around me, suddenly cold despite the warm spring air. My stomach clenched, tight and heavy. I thought about walking out, just grabbing Liam's hand and disappearing into the crowd. Would they even notice? I caught my mom's expression. She was beaming. Not at me, of course. At Kayla, at the daughter who made the right choices. And Kayla, to her credit, looked uncomfortable. Her smile faltered. She glanced at me, and for a moment I saw something like guilt flicker in her eyes. But she didn't say anything. No one did. And in that silence, I felt so small, like background noise at someone else's celebration. I looked down at Liam again. His fingers were gripping the hem of my blouse, tightly. His jaw was clenched, lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't say anything, but his body said everything. My heart twisted. He heard that. He understood it. And worse, he saw me accept it. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about revenge or proving anything. I was thinking about the example I was setting, about what Liam was learning, about me, about himself, about what love should look like. And that's when everything started to shift. But not because I said something, because he did. And none of us saw it coming. I should have known what kind of day it was going to be the moment I pulled into the school parking lot and saw my mom's car already parked front and center, like she was the one graduating. I sat there for a moment, engine off, just breathing. My palms were sweaty against the steering wheel. Liam sat in the passenger seat, swinging his legs and humming softly to himself, oblivious in the way only a 12-year-old can be. I envied that. He looked over and smiled. "You okay, Mom?" I nodded, but my throat felt tight. "Yeah, just tired." Which was true, but not the whole truth. The real truth was heavier. I didn't want to be there. Not because I wasn't proud of Kayla. I was. She worked hard, stayed focused, did everything right, graduated with honors. But every time I looked at her, I couldn't help but feel like I was looking at the version of myself my mother wished she'd gotten. I'm Alina, by the way. 36, divorced, no degree, one child. I dropped out of college when I was 23 to have Liam. His father left a year later, and I never went back. Life happened fast, and most days it felt like I'd been trying to catch my breath ever since. My mom, Gloria, never really got over the fact that I threw away my future. She told me once, flat out, that she'd expected more from her firstborn. That comment has echoed in my head more times than I'd like to admit. Kayla came along 8 years after me. Our dad passed away before she even hit kindergarten, so I was already out of the house by the time she was old enough to really notice the difference in how we were treated. Or maybe she did notice, and just learned not to rock the boat. She was always the golden girl, smart, polished, easygoing. She played piano. She got straight A's. She never talked back. And while I was changing diapers and working late shifts at a diner, she was going to summer STEM camps and homecoming dances. The gap between us wasn't just years, it was worlds. Still, I made peace with it, or tried to, because Kayla never rubbed it in. She was kind to Liam, invited us to things, always smiled when she saw us. It wasn't her fault that our mother held her up like a trophy and treated me like a cautionary tale. But graduation day, it brought every buried feeling right back to the surface. Walking into that auditorium felt like walking into a pageant I was never meant to win. Everyone had their roles. The proud mom, the shining graduate, the doting relatives. And then there was me, standing off to the side in last year's dress, hair pulled into a messy bun I hadn't planned on still wearing. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was here for Kayla, not to impress anyone. But then I saw my mom's face light up when she spotted my sister across the room. That warm, proud expression, one I used to imagine seeing on her face when I was a little girl. I hadn't realized how much I missed it until I saw it aimed at someone else. I tried to focus on Liam. His hand in mine grounded me. He looked up at the stage with this wide-eyed excitement that almost made me forget everything else. Almost. Because deep down, I knew this day wasn't just about Kayla. It was going to be about what I wasn't. And when it finally happened, when those words left my mother's mouth, I wasn't surprised. I was just tired. Tired of always bracing for impact. But I had no idea that Liam had been watching, listening, and silently deciding he wasn't going to let it slide. Not this time. The ceremony itself was fine. Polite clapping. Name after name called out over the mic, the usual lineup of awkward stage walks and proud parents holding up their phones like trophies. I kept my eyes on Kayla the entire time, watching her glowing, waving, soaking it all in. She deserved it. She really did. But that didn't make standing there any easier. I held Liam's hand, my fingers resting lightly over his. I could feel him shifting his weight from one foot to the other, a little bored, a little warm. I knelt down once to whisper, "Almost done," and he nodded, resting his head briefly against my shoulder before straightening again. When they called Kayla's name, my mother clapped louder than anyone else. She even whooped. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. I tried, I really did. After the ceremony, the crowd spilled outside like soda fizz, bright, loud, and a little sticky. We gathered near the bleachers for pictures. The air smelled like grass, hot pavement, and too much perfume. A million camera flashes and fake laughs blended into white noise. I stood a little off to the side, watching. Kayla bounced from one group of friends to the next, posing, hugging, collecting flowers. Our mom hovered near her, fluffing her hair, straightening her sash, proudly reintroducing herself to old teachers like she was the one who'd earned the diploma. I pulled out my phone, zoomed in, and snapped a few photos of Kayla. I figured I'd send them to her later with a message like, "So proud of you." Something safe, neutral. Then someone said, "Let's get a family shot." I froze. My gut told me exactly what was about to happen. Kayla waved me over because she always tries to include me, even when no one else does. So I walked over, gently guiding Liam with me. He looked up at me and whispered, "Do I have to smile?" I laughed, soft and tired. We both do. The group bunched together. My mom was on Kayla's right, Uncle Richard on her left, one of my cousins squished in too. I took a spot near the edge, one arm around Liam, my body half turned away like I already knew I didn't fit. That's when it happened. Mom leaned over Kayla's shoulder, adjusted her cap with delicate fingers, and said, so casually it felt like a reflex, "And this one actually achieved something. Unlike her." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't even breathe. The words sliced through the soft noise around us like a needle popping a balloon. There was a pause, just a second, but long enough for it to settle into the space between us. Then Uncle Richard chuckled, shaking his head like he was the comic relief in some family sitcom. The other one couldn't even graduate a marriage, he added, smiling like he was being clever. A few teachers nearby glanced over. One smiled awkwardly and quickly looked away. My body stiffened. I could feel my face flush, hot and prickly like I'd stepped into a spotlight I hadn't asked for. My hands clenched into fists, so tight my nails dug into my palms. I looked at Kayla. Her smile had faltered. Her eyes dropped to the ground. She didn't say anything. No one did. Not a word. Not a, "that's not fair." Not a, "don't say that." Just silence. And in that silence, I shrunk. I shrunk into that old version of myself, the girl who was always too loud, too sensitive, too broken. But Liam, he didn't shrink. He was staring up at them with a look I'd never seen before, his little jaw tight, his eyes narrowed, burning. He looked at them, then at me, and that's when I realized he wasn't going to let it go. Not this time. I stood there, completely still, trying to swallow the lump in my throat before it gave me away. My mother was already turning towards someone else, grinning like she hadn't just gutted me in front of a dozen people. Uncle Richard was checking his phone. Kayla looked like she wanted to disappear, but as always, she didn't say a word. I forced my shoulders back and gently tugged Liam a little closer to me. I just wanted to get through the rest of the afternoon without crying. That was the new goal. I could do that. I'd done it 1,000 times before. "Come on," I whispered, mostly to myself. "Let's just go." But Liam didn't move. I glanced down at him, and he was still staring at them, still holding that look, his little brows furrowed, jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle jump in his cheek. He was breathing through his nose, quick and shallow, angry but quiet. And then he let go of my hand. I reached for him instinctively, but he was already stepping away. "Liam," I said softly, confused. He walked past Kayla, past my mom, past the little half-circle of family still buzzing about where to go for lunch, and headed toward the front of the crowd. At first I thought maybe he just needed space, or maybe a bathroom, but then I saw where he was going. The stage. Someone had wheeled out a portable mic stand, and a sign next to it read, "Open floor, family and friends. Feel free to share a few words." I'd ignored it earlier. Thought it was for grandparents who loved speeches or overenthusiastic siblings with inside jokes. But Liam was walking straight toward it. "Wait, Liam!" I said again, louder this time. My heart jumped into my throat. My feet moved before my brain could catch up. I reached him halfway up the steps, crouched slightly and grabbed his wrist, not hard, just enough to stop him. "What are you doing?" I whispered urgently. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his voice came out calm, steady. "They shouldn't talk about you like that." And that's when my breath caught. He wasn't trying to start a scene. He wasn't trying to be brave. He was just telling the truth. Like it was obvious. "Liam, it's not," I started, but he shook his head, gently pulled away and walked up to the mic. The crowd was thinning, distracted by photos and greetings, but a few people noticed. Some teachers, a few parents, Kayla. I stood at the base of the steps, frozen. My first instinct was panic. I imagined him embarrassing himself, or me. I imagined him getting flustered or stumbling over his words, or worse, being laughed at. But when he tapped the mic and it made that soft thump through the speakers, everything around us quieted. Eyes turned. Conversations died out. And suddenly, all I could hear was the pounding in my chest. Liam looked out at the crowd with that same intense, steady expression. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't shaky. His hands were at his sides, his posture upright. He looked so small standing there, barely reaching the mic, but he also looked taller than I'd ever seen him. The silence stretched, and in that silence, something shifted inside me. This wasn't the story I thought I was living. It wasn't about shame or failure or being overlooked. It was about the voice I hadn't realized I'd passed on, the one that had quietly been learning, growing, waiting for a moment like this. Liam stood there, just a kid at a microphone that was slightly too tall for him. The wind caught his hair gently, and I watched him reach up and adjust the mic like he'd done it before. He hadn't. The world was still. Not just quiet, still. People turned. Conversations paused. A few phones lifted slowly. The principal, halfway into a conversation with a teacher, turned toward the stage, eyebrows raised, and then he spoke. "My name is Liam," he said, clear and steady. "I'm 12. My Aunt Kayla just graduated. She's really smart, and I think she's awesome." He paused, glanced toward Kayla. She smiled back, tentative but touched. "But I want to say something about my mom." The weight of those words hit me before he even continued. My heart was in my throat. I wanted to run up and grab him, or maybe shield him, but my feet were glued to the grass. Something told me, don't move. Let him finish. Liam looked right at the crowd. "She didn't graduate college," he said, matter of fact. "She didn't stay married. She works a lot. She doesn't have trophies or degrees or stuff like that, and people say things about her like she messed up, like she didn't do anything special." He paused. The silence grew even tighter. Then he looked right at my mother. I saw it. His chin lifted just slightly. "But she built something better." He turned his gaze back to the crowd. "She built me, and I think I turned out pretty okay." I heard someone gasp, not dramatically, just soft, like they hadn't expected to feel it that deeply. He didn't falter. He didn't rush. He didn't even look around for approval. "She raised me by herself. She taught me how to be kind and how to stand up for people. She helps other people even when she's tired. She always makes sure I know I'm enough. And today, I wanted her to know she's enough too." My eyes blurred. I couldn't stop the tears now. I didn't even try. I looked at my mother. Her smile was gone. Her lips were pressed together in a way that looked like regret or confusion. She was blinking rapidly. Uncle Richard was staring at the ground, shifting awkwardly. No jokes now. Kayla's hands were clasped at her chest. Her eyes were glassy. And me? I stood there frozen, my hands shaking, my heart cracked wide open. Not from pain this time, but from the sheer power of that moment. Of him, the boy I raised, the boy I worried about constantly. If I was doing it right, if I was giving him enough, if he'd grow up resenting me for everything I couldn't provide. But right then, I didn't see resentment. I saw pride. I saw love, unshaken and unconditional. Liam stepped back from the mic. No bow, no dramatics, just walked calmly down the steps and straight to me. I knelt as he reached me, and he wrapped his arms around my neck without saying a word. I held him tight. The silence lingered for another beat, and then light clapping. Hesitant at first, then stronger. A teacher wiped her eyes. Someone murmured, "Wow." Another said, "That was beautiful." I didn't care about the applause. I had already received something no one in that crowd could give me. Validation from the one person who mattered most. And in that moment, for the first time in a very long time, I felt seen. We didn't say much on the car ride home. Liam sat in the back seat, quietly kicking his sneakers together, humming a tune I didn't recognize. The windows were cracked open and the warm air rolled in, lifting a strand of my hair and brushing it across my cheek. It felt peaceful, like the kind of peace that only comes after a storm. I kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror. Every time I did, I felt something stretch and soften in my chest. There he was, my son, looking out the window like nothing monumental had just happened, like he hadn't just stood up in front of an entire crowd and shifted the weight of a lifetime off my shoulders. Eventually, I broke the silence. "Hey," I said, voice soft. "What made you decide to say all that?" He looked at me, then shrugged. "I don't know. It just felt true." It just felt true. That sentence knocked the wind out of me more than the insults ever had. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. My eyes burned again, but this time I let the tears come without apology. That night, after Liam went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea, staring out the window into the dark. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the soft creak of old floorboards settling. I thought about everything. My mother's words, Richard's laughter, the silence that followed, and then Liam's voice. I kept replaying it in my head, not just what he said, but how he said it. Calm, certain, unshakable. It wasn't just about defending me. It was about honoring me. That's what made it different. That's what made it holy. I used to think that my story didn't matter because it didn't look like success. I didn't have a degree to frame or a ring to polish or some polished career to make my mother proud. I had stretch marks. I had unpaid bills. I had a scar under my chin from dropping a plate while crying in the kitchen when Liam was 2, and I was too tired to even clean it up. But Liam didn't see any of that as failure. He saw love, effort, strength. And somewhere in the blur of those years, I guess I forgot that he was watching me, learning from me. Not the version of me that my family judged, but the real one, the one who stayed, the one who kept going. A few days after the graduation, Kayla texted me, just a short message. "Liam is amazing. You should be so proud. I'm sorry for how they treat you. You deserve better." I stared at that message for a long time. It wasn't an apology for what she did, but maybe it was for what she hadn't done. Still, it meant something. As for my mom, well, nothing changed, not out loud anyway. But at our next family gathering, she didn't say anything sharp. No jabs, no sideways glances, just polite conversation. Civil, measured. And maybe that's all I'll ever get. But the thing is, I don't need her validation anymore because now I know the truth. I didn't fail. I raised a boy who can stand in front of a crowd and speak with heart. A boy who knows what love looks like. A boy who isn't afraid to say the hard thing when it matters most. That's more than a degree, more than a marriage certificate, more than anything they ever gave me. And if that's not building something better, then I don't know what is.